Today, I'm talking with Ivan Bodley, and we had a little bit of a problem with the recording. I tried to edit it out as best I could, but just know that this is a really interesting interview, and I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to Story Power, a bi-monthly podcast where my guests and I geek out about the stories we're passionate about in all different genres, styles, and formats. My name is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden, and I started this podcast during the summer of 2020 at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. As I watched the reaction of my friends, family, and social media circle, I noticed that many people turned to stories for comfort and help in making sense of the craziness going on around them. My goal was to do the same for my listeners, but as I chatted with my guests throughout the first year, I discovered that their personal stories were the most fascinating thing about each episode. Neil Gaiman says, "Fairy tales are more than true, not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten." I now know that sharing our experiences with others helps us defeat our own dragons. It is our stories that connect us to one another. Let's see what wisdom today's guest has to share with us. So today I am talking to Ivan Bodley, and this is episode 35. And Ivan, I'm really excited to talk to you because I don't know very much about the music industry. And I've been reading your memoir, which is titled, "Am I Famous Yet?" I love that title. And I'm like, oh, I kind of understand some of the whole love of having the audience, the energy of the audience, because I used to be an actress, and I get that feedback from the audience, but nothing like 50,000 screaming fans. So I can't wait to hear your story about, because I haven't got that far yet. How did you become a musician? Why did you choose the bass? Things like that.
Yeah, these are all pertinent life questions that we ask ourselves every day. The subtitle of my book is called "Memoir of a Working Class Rock Star." And that's sort of where I think, the crux of it lies. Mm-hmm. It's like I do rock star-ish kinds of things now and again, and I hang around famous-y people now and again, but I definitely work for a living. I lift my own amps, and I'm driving my own car and all those kinds of things. So it's kind of like I feel rock star adjacent, even though I do occasionally get recognized for things, that people have seen me do. It's a very interesting existence to have.
Yeah, you're kind of like, when I read that in your memoir, I said, oh, you're sort of like what Alec Baldwin says, the working actor. Oh, it's the people you go, oh, that guy, oh, that woman, but right. You don't know their name,
Yeah.
But they're the ones who are working all the time.
Yesterday morning, I was in Minneapolis. I did a show Monday night with Little Anthony and the Imperials, the great Rock and Roll Hall of Famer inductees. And I had to check out at 5 o'clock in the morning to make a 7 a.m. flight out of the, this is every day, life on the road, sort of getting the first flight out kind of thing. So I go to give my key card back to the guy at the front desk, and it had my name on it. And he's looking at me, and you can tell he thinks I'm somebody, or he thinks I might be somebody, or he thinks I might know somebody. Not that I am, but, I just have that kind of look about me. If I'm carrying an instrument or something, they think, clearly I'm in a band and I'm catching a flight at 5 in the morning. I must be going somewhere. So behind the desk, and then I just sat down. I'm waiting for the hotel shuttle to go to the airport or wherever. Mm-hmm. So behind the desk, clearly he's gone to his computer and he's Googled me. He's checked out because my name is on the key card thing. So he's like, he just kind of blurts out in the middle of nowhere. He's like, "I thought I recognized you from somewhere." I'm like, what I wanted to say with him, you recognize me because you're looking at my web page right now. You haven't actually seen me do anything. You don't know who I am or anything about me, other than the fact that you just this second Googled me, But he was trying to make conversation, and he was trying to be nice. But
yes,
yeah, it's like he doesn't, clearly he didn't know who I was, and there was no reason why he should have.
Right.
There's nothing that I did was probably in his orbit.
Right.
So that am I famous yet? That whole title that I'm using is sort of like, what does that even mean? Even if you are wildly famous, if you've sold, I don't know, 10 million records in the United States or something, there's like 330 million people who don't know who you are and don't care, So it's a very limited thing, very subjective thing.
Well, and it's not one of those, I mean, I don't know. I haven't been to a whole lot of concerts because we live in the country, pretty far away from town. And even when we lived in Portland, Oregon, we didn't go to a whole lot of concerts. But you don't sit like my husband and I do when we're watching TV. Sometimes we'll look at the people in the background. But mostly when you're at a concert, you don't sit and look at the people in the background. You don't look at the background singers and
Right.
You're looking at
certainly not the bass player, which is what I'm doing, right? Yeah. Yeah, they know the singer, and they know maybe if there's a lead guitar player, they probably know, Steven Tyler and Joe Perry out of Aerosmith, Do you know the other three guys? I do, but most people probably don't, It's the nature of the business. It's fine. So,
yes.
Yeah, I don't begrudge anyone that.
So how long did it take you to write your book?
It probably only took a couple of, maybe a month or so sitting down to actually do it, but a month sort of got spread out over maybe a period of 4 years, because I did most of it maybe about 4 years ago, and then never quite finished it. And then suddenly we had a year, 15 months off because all the performing artists, were not working during the pandemic. So I had plenty of time to go ahead and get everything nice and completed that way. 4 years and a month, let's put it that way.
4 years and a month. Yeah. Because, oh my gosh, I'm a slow writer, so I'm still working on my second book. But it's a novel. It's not a memoir. So that's a little bit different kind of a book. But you have a lot of presence on, I was checking out your YouTube channel. You're on Instagram and Facebook, and then you have your podcast. And how do you manage all of that? Do you have somebody who helps you with that, or do you do it all yourself?
No, it's all me, but there's a secret to it. A lot of it is the same sort of content. It just gets distributed over the various platforms, because what I find is there are people who consume only one particular platform. Like there are people who are only Instagram people, or there are other people who are only Facebook people. Or I started doing, the book. Before I actually got it in physical print, I went ahead and started serializing the chapters as a YouTube series, where I'm just reading the chapters sort of in front of my little home studio here as a background set. And then I'm starting to realize, like, there are people who will only watch YouTube, and there are other people who only listen to podcasts when they're in the car or at the gym or whatever they do. So then I just took those audio snippets and transferred them over to the podcast. And only now am I sort of generating new podcast content that's podcast only, which is sort of like, what I'm calling the Playing for a Living series, which is kind of like notes from the week gone past, sort of memorable stories of what I just did in the last 7 days kind of thing.
Yes, I listened.
And that's been fun too, but I'll see how long.
How long you'll do that?
Those? Checked a couple of those? Yeah, okay.
The one about the wedding.
I'll see how long I sort of stay motivated. Yeah, all the weddings. I'm doing weddings every weekend now. These days, it's been sort of like, that's the business that came back first, was the private party business from the pandemic. So the concerts are only now starting to come back. So the weddings started to come back in June. That's when, like, we had cancellations all the way up through May. Even as, we're going through April thinking, well, the ones in May going to stick? No, they started to go cancel, postpone. And that's been happening for the previous 15 months or whatever it was. And then suddenly June 5th, they stuck, and they've all stayed since. So I've been very, very busy since then. Now, as we're getting into end of August, beginning of September, now some of the concerts are just now starting to come back. The Broadway shows are now just starting to announce that they're opening in the fall. So September, October, some of the Broadway shows are going to be starting to come back. And I think the tours, most of the tours are going to be next year. There are a couple tours that went out, but I think most of them are going to be next year before they really get up and running again with that.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Let the virus settle down a little bit with all those people together in a mass location. Yeah. So what did you do while you were home?
It's been interesting to see how it's going. Yeah. Well, I kept busy, so I really got the book finished, got it copy edited, got it formatted, got it put out, artwork and all that stuff done. I was also recording a lot of material with my compatriots, my fellow musicians who are also similarly unemployed. So we did it all via file exchange. Everybody's got a home recording rig these days. So I did probably 2 albums worth of material just via email, really, with all my friends.
Wow!
And those got those, and also I've got a whole huge back catalog of stuff that had never been mixed or mastered. So all of that stuff, sort of, and I was kind of putting those out kind of one a week as a YouTube video sort of thing. So I got picked up by a record company out of Colorado called Color Red Music. And they're starting to put out my new original music, and they're starting to put out on my catalog as well. So it's available now for licensing in ways that it had never been before. And this is all sort of, pandemic project kind of stuff that, managed to keep us busy for a good solid 15 months.
Wow, that's cool. So I was going to ask, and you just answered. You do write your own stuff.
Oh, yeah. No, I've got reams and reams of it. I have... when I first signed to Color Red, I think I transferred to them 120 tracks day one. This is all the stuff that I'd written through the pandemic, and also I had a recording band project with a couple of buddies of mine between like 8 and 12 years ago. We would sort of convene and write and record each other's stuff, kind of as a courtesy kind of thing. So I had like 75 tracks in the can from that project. And again, a lot of those had not been mixed or mastered, so I spent a lot of time during the pandemic teaching myself sound mixing, for studio recording. So I became a mixing engineer and put all that stuff together as well. And I'm still in the process of releasing those about once a week or so, as I'm getting new video footage to go with them. I'm also, an amateur videographer. When I just told you I just came back from Minneapolis, I was playing the Minnesota State Fair. So I did a whole montage of all the various food vendor signs, fried pickles on a stick, fried chicken on a stick, fried hot dogs on a stick, so I have a whole video of that stuff I put together that I'm then attaching to one of my old songs that I call Music from the Vaults, those series that I did, 10 years ago, and putting all that stuff, making that stuff publicly available for the first time now too.
Wow, that's so cool. I love it.
It's been interesting.
Yes. Well, the pandemic has definitely been interesting for me too, because that's when I started this podcast. So I was wondering, you always lived, you live in Queens, right?
I'm in Queens, New York. Yeah, I've been Queens for 4 years. Before that, I was in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, for about 25 years. And that's where my mother actually grew up. Oddly enough, I ended up living about 10 blocks from where my mother grew up. But I was born and raised in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Because my mother got married to my dad, and he got a job with the Tennessee Valley Authority down in Chattanooga, and they moved down there in the 60s, had me, and I was there, born and raised, my brother and I. And then went to school in New Orleans. Then I lived in New York for a minute, then L.A. for a minute, then London for a minute, then Boston for a minute, and then back to New York. I kind of hopped around for a bunch of hot minutes there. But I've been back in New York since, it's almost 30 years now. It's the longest place I've lived.
Wow.
Anywhere. It's been New York now.
Yeah. So how did you get hooked on music?
That's an interesting question. It started kind of from record collecting, from vinyl collecting back in the old days. That's when I sort of started getting really interested in it as a fan. I sort of found music was a big solace for me as kind of a solitary kid, kind of a misfit kid, didn't really fit in with the cool crowd, certainly in junior high school. So then, as a listener, decided that, it would be great if I could participate in this, that this activity that I seem to find so much joy in. And what was the easiest way to do that? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe bass, because it's only got 4 strings. It's only one note at a time. How hard could it be? I said to my young self. There's a point there. Like it's easy to sort of get functional on a bass guitar kind of quickly. But then, as I've spent the last 40 years proving to myself, it's a lifelong pursuit of misery and self-degradation to try to get competent and remain so over time. There's a lot to it that I'm still studying, still learning things. And furthermore, I have a theory that your instrument chooses you. You don't necessarily choose your instrument, because there are certain personality types that go with certain musical instruments. What you were just talking about before, like if you go to see a concert, the first 2 people you notice are probably the lead singer and the lead guitar player, because those are the 2 personality types that go to the front of the stage and they say, put a light on me and go, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me, right? That's a personality style that wants to do that and thinks that the entire room of people, you all need to shut up and listen to me, what I have to say. Like that's a specific personality lane, right? And if you think about the bass player is the guy standing in the back, just sort of being supportive and going like, yeah, okay, whatever, we'll play that. You want to play this? There's not a lot of soloing. There's not a lot of and I think that's true of just about any instrument in the orchestra. So I think, your personality type, the instrument itself beckons to you and said, this is the one that's going to suit you. And for me, it was bass for a number of reasons, and it's proven to be quite accurate,
So are you saying you're an introvert?
Well, I'm a professional live performer. So that's a hard thing to claim. Like, yes, I'm an introvert. I stand on stage in front of people my whole life. So yes, but no, but yes, I was certainly a shy kind of kid. I'm a little better now, but if you put me in a crowded room full of people and we're just having a conversation, and if I don't have a guitar in my hands, sometimes I'm like, I don't know how to act, what to do with my hands, and it's hard to want to talk to people. But if I'm playing in front of 80,000 people and I have a bass in my hands, I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and I know exactly where I'm supposed to be standing, and I've practiced my whole life to do this. So that feels completely comfortable to me. So yeah, it's a bizarre thing. Like it's hard to claim that you're an introvert in front of people, but I also understand the fact that some performers, when you meet them in person, one-to-one, are actually fairly shy people,
Yeah. Because a lot of actors that I know are that way, and I'm that way. And of course, now I'm teaching. I'm not acting, and I haven't directed a play since 2017. When I'm just myself, I really enjoy the quiet. I thrive on that, But when I was acting, it was like, oh wow, this is pretty cool. It's a little bit like getting a shot of a drug or something, the energy from the audience. But I was playing somebody who wasn't exactly like me too. So,
well, that's the key. I think you get to sort of cloak yourself in that character, and then you become fearless. That character can say or do anything. It's not me; it's the character. And it's a very similar thing to being a performing musician. When I walk up on stage, I'm supposed to be playing the part of the rock star. It's my job, is to stand in this pose and flip the hair around, make the grimaces, whatever you have to do. I'm wearing the uniform, or whatever it is,
right.
And I can cut up like that for 3 hours at a time, no problem. But backstage at the meet and greet, sometimes it's a little different kind of dynamic. It's hard to kind of extend yourself like that.
Yes, I do not like small talk. It just drives me crazy. So yeah. Well, and you sent me some photos, and I said, oh wow, he's met some really cool people. Tell the person that you met that you enjoyed meeting the most, maybe.
Oh, that's a tough question because, the reason I sent you the photos is because I have so many of them. I've really started collecting them kind of early on. I recognized the value of that because my first job in the music business was as a publicist. So my job was to help get the artists. I was working for Epic Records, which is a division of CBS at the time. So we're trying to get our artists into the newspaper. So I recognized early on the value of having that photo op, whatever that was, and it wasn't just the photo op that, the moment, and it wasn't also just the moment that you got it into the New York Times or whatever. You then had reprint value for that photograph for like in perpetuity. Like you could put it as part of a press kit, back in those days, we didn't yet have websites, we would have like a packet of papers that we would send out, so that you would put that photo was good for life, basically. If you had a photo with you and X famous person, right? So, I started doing this because even back in my college radio days, I was interviewing the artists that were coming through New Orleans on tour. So they'd come down to the station and I have them sign an autograph and autograph their album and take a picture with them occasionally. So, like, I have a picture of me and Cyndi Lauper from like 1983.
Yeah, I think I saw that photo.
Right? It's a crazy photo. And I'd quite forgotten about it because it'd been sort of in my dad's attic for like 30 years. And I just recently refound, there's a whole stack of them back from my record company days. There's a picture of me and Ozzy Osbourne.
Right.
And I do not remember ever meeting Ozzy Osbourne. And I don't know how you don't remember meeting Ozzy Osbourne. I was not a drinker at the time, and I'm a fan of Ozzy's. I'm a huge fan. So how do I not remember that I have a photograph with him? Because he was on Epic Records. He was on the label that I worked for. So it was some press party, and we would hire a professional photographer to take pictures of the artist with all the press people or the radio people. We would do this very consistently backstage. So that as soon as we got all the press and radio people through the line, then I was jumping to get a photo for myself at the end. So that's why I have photos with all the people that were on Epic. Like I have pictures with Greg Allman and Sade and Cheap Trick and all these people. That was exactly that. Like I was stepping at the end of the line and get a souvenir photo for myself. So I know how I got the Ozzy photo. That's how I got it. But I do not remember the event. I don't remember the event. I don't remember meeting him. And there's a similar one with Alice Cooper too. And I'm like, I don't ever remember being in the same room with Alice Cooper, but clearly I have a photographic evidence of the fact that I did it. So I just find that really amusing, it also helped to have 30 years of a separate music business career, to help erase all the memories from when I was a kid, But some of the artists, like when I was at my college radio station, I met and interviewed the bass player Stanley Clarke, who's as famous as jazz bass players get. He's that guy. And then when I graduated from Tulane, I started working at Epic Records, and Stanley was signed to Epic Records. So I became Stanley's publicist. I was his publicity agent. And then through that, I ended up getting, as a bass player, I got to take a few lessons with Stanley. And he's just remained like a lifelong mentor and friend. I've known him 35 years. And he wrote the foreword for my book. He was kind enough to sort of write the foreword for my book because I'd written liner notes for him for his albums when I used to work for his record company. So, he's the kind of person that, when I first met him, it was playing the fame game. I wanted to meet the famous bass player and get the autograph and take the picture. And now, sort of like, 35 years later, we've got this enduring sort of friendship. And I have that with a few people that I've been fortunate enough to work with, like Shirley Alston from the Shirelles and, the Tokens and the Crystals and Little Anthony and the Imperials, those guys, like I've been working with them for years and years and years. Sam Moore from Sam and Dave. So they're personal friends beyond just being, business acquaintances. So those photos I treasure because, I probably took the photo when I very first met them,
Right.
So then you have this record of like, that was when I first met Shirley from the Shirelles in like 93, and then I have a picture of us, I think 25 years later, like reenacting the same pose, to sort of see which one of us has aged better, and P.S. she aged better than I did.
I love that though. Yeah, I think that is part of what I miss, because now that I live in Arizona, I don't associate with any of those people that I worked with in the theater. And but those enduring friendships,
Right.
that's cool. That's the cool part.
It is, and it's the most rewarding, And Sam Moore, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, Sam and Dave. He's kind of my surrogate sort of road father, and then Shirley Alston Reeves, original lead singer of the world famous Shirelles. She's the same age as my mother was. So like these are sort of my two surrogate parents, and I've been knowing for 20 and 25 years each. They become part of the extended family.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. I love it. I have to tell you that last night I had one of those actor nightmare kind of dreams where I was going to interview you. For some reason, there were a whole bunch of people in the house. Someone had done something with my laptop computer. I couldn't find it anywhere.
Right.
And I was trying to get to send you the Zoom link and
Right.
so, and here you are, not even really famous, but but I was wondering, when you play with or when you meet these famous people, do you have those kind of nightmares the night before, or are you so used to it now?
Well, I mean, what you're talking about is sort of panic and stress dreams, and I very much have them all the time because a lot of what we do is panic and stress inducing, And now, not necessarily meeting a famous person, but it'll be like even if I have to, I'm leading the band at a wedding gig, on a weekend, and I just know that there are 1,000 moving parts to this thing. There's 12 musicians involved. There's a huge amount of repertoire. There's a party planner who might be, very buttoned up and detail oriented and strict, and is, I just, when I'm faced with 1,000 details like this and travel, then you've got the gig's in Cape Cod and we're in New York City, so it's going to be a 4-hour drive. If there's no traffic, P.S. there's always traffic, So like, how are we going to get there and take the ferry to Nantucket and get where we need to be on time, get everybody on site on time, hit all of our marks, play the first dance without, while all the video cameras are on, without embarrassing the couple, reproduce all this music for 4 hours faithfully. It's a lot, and it can be very stress inducing. And I think only sort of by doing it and by repetition and surviving gig after gig of doing that, do you sort of develop the mechanisms for getting to be more comfortable with it, I think, over time. Yeah. And similarly, though, if you're doing a big TV spot or something, and you've got if there's a big audience and there's going to be a camera on you, and you've got to really play correctly, or subbing in a Broadway show, for instance, like, you have 2.5 hours of worth of music that you need to play, not only play correctly, but you need to play that music in the style of the person you're subbing for. They don't like to hear, they don't want to hear your personality brought to the music. They want to hear the music that they're used to hearing, because upstairs there are actors, singers, and dancers. So they need to not be distracted by some new bass fill that I'm going to play in bar 68. Because they're like, what? They need to hit like 3 different marks every 4 bars, So they want consistency. They want accuracy. They don't like mistakes. They don't like improvisation. So like that can be very stress inducing, especially like the first time you're subbing in a Broadway pit, you don't have any rehearsal. They give you the materials.
Whoa.
And you have as long as you need to prepare it, usually, 3 to 4 weeks kind of thing. Then you come in and you do a performance, and you get one shot at it. And if it's good, they'll hire you again. If it's not good, you've done all that work for one shot. You'll get paid for the one show, and they'll never see you again. And that's really stressful, because the hourly wage for learning an entire show to do it once. You're making $2 an hour or something like that. If you end up subbing on the show for a long time, it becomes much more comfortable. But that first show, you almost have to wear a diaper down there, because it's just like you're just completely tensed up, trying not to make any mistakes.
I'm surprised that they don't let you have a rehearsal at least.
Well, that would cost them thousands of dollars.
Oh, because they have to pay you union due rates.
Yeah, and they have to pay everybody else. If you're rehearsing, you're going to call the whole orchestra. That's thousands of dollars. Or if you're going to call the singers, thousands. Like I've had rehearsals on Broadway a couple of times, but the rehearsal wasn't for me. The rehearsal was for like a new principal actor, and I just got the benefit of being able to sit on bass and also have it be my rehearsal as well. But that's rare. That's rare that happens.
So when you are subbing, do you get to hear the tracks of the songs? To know how the bass.
Yeah, they give you the sheet music, and they give you a recording of the show from the monitor of like each individual chair has their own little mixer called an AVM. So they mix in exactly what they want to hear. So if you need to hear more drums and less vocals, or more oboe but less viola, you know what I mean? Like you dial in a little mix. So they give you a recording of the bass player's mix. So you know what you'll be hearing, and you also have the sheet music in front of you. And then you basically prepare it. It's not really sight reading, because if you came in and tried to read it cold, you really would not do well. You need to really understand the rhythms of the show, especially the situations where it's not in tempo necessarily, or like you're following a conductor. Sometimes they give you a video recording of the conductor so you can see the hand motions to know when the downbeats are, or behind dialogue, very often you'll just be playing something quietly they call a vamp or a safety vamp, and then, at some mystery point when they say, and then I wrote, then the conductor will go 3, 4, and then you're in, right? So you kind of have to learn where all those marks are and where those things will happen. And with the show recording and or the conductor video, you're usually pretty well prepared by the time you have a good sense of at least what one performance of the show looks like.
Right.
So there's a chance you might, be able to do well when you get in to do your first performance.
So have you done a lot of that, subbing for Broadway shows?
I have. In fact, I've never even had a chair. I've been a sub on 12 different Broadway shows over the years.
Oh, wow.
I did Rock of Ages on Broadway. I subbed on that show for the full 6.5 year run. So I probably did 300 performances over time of that show. Some of them, there was a Jimmy Buffett musical called Escape from Margaritaville that I only did 4 performances on before the show closed. It only opened for 4 months. Spider-Man, I probably did 50 performances on. Wow. There was a Donna Summer musical I probably did 50 performances on. I'm maybe in neighborhood of 500 career shows in a dozen years with a dozen different shows. And it's a really interesting process, interesting community, and kind of a different skill set from doing a concert. Because again, you're following a conductor, you're serving dramatic business upstairs, and choreography business upstairs, so you have a different sort of function. It's not like a concert where you're out there, playing your instrument and it's all about the music only. It's also about the dialogue and the acting and the singing and the dancing. And so it's a very interesting environment that until you sort of get in the pit and understand how that function is, you can only sort of imagine what it is, but not really know it, I think,
Yeah, I've been in musicals, but I haven't really ever thought about how hard it is for the musicians down in the pit.
It can be. Yeah, it can be.
Yeah, difficult for them. But I was thinking earlier when you were talking about the stress of having all these moving parts, I have stage managed quite a few shows.
Oh, sure. You know.
Yeah. That's difficult. So you having to be in charge of all these things for a wedding or some sort of social event. Right. I totally understand that. Yeah. That stress level.
Well, those stage managers, I'm in complete awe of, especially the Broadway stage managers, because they're all wearing the headset like you're wearing right now with the microphone, and they're calling every light cue, and they're calling every stage cue, and it's just every technical cue of the show. It is exhausting to listen to them. I can't imagine, even that they're reading off a script and following and calling the cue numbers that are connected with each line, and they're also looking at the conductor to see where the downbeat for the music is, because that affects cues as well. That's, to me, that's the most amazing juggling feat I've ever seen. Stage managing.
It is hard. It's difficult, but it was rewarding too. I mean, I worked with the city of Portland subsidized a company called the Musical Company. It was a semi-professional company, and I stage managed several shows. And one of them, the woman who was directing had worked with the San Francisco Opera. So I worked with her from the very first day all the way through to when I took over the show, when it opened. And she was amazing.
Yeah.
And but yeah, that was difficult. Yeah. Looking back on it, I'm like, oh, how did I do that? How did I?
Well, I think you do it the same way we do anything that sort of requires a cumulative set of skills. You know, like playing bass on a Broadway show. That's a cumulative set. It's one foot in front of the other. Like first you learn your scales, then you learn your arpeggios, then you learn, how to play in a band, then you learn how to song forms, and then you learn how to sight read and all these other things. So step by step by step, after 30 years, no problem, it becomes easy. But it takes, it takes years to accumulate all those skill sets. And again, stage managing, my hat is off to anybody who can keep all those balls in the air. The juggling act is amazing to me.
Wow. So what are you planning on for the rest of 2021? Do you have things already booked?
I am booked. Every Saturday is booked, doing weddings, funerals, and bar mitzvahs through at least November that I know about, a bunch of private party sort of things. Like I said, the concerts are just starting to come in. About 3 weeks ago, I did my first one back with Jay and the Americans. Monday, I was with Little Anthony and the Imperials, and I think I have another Imperials date coming up in October. And then there's a tour that some folks are talking about, which is going to be next year, I think. So too premature to announce things yet. Oh, when I did a press event the other day for Ain't Too Proud, the Life and Times of the Temptations musical on Broadway, which is just a tremendous show. It's all the Temptations music and all the great Motown music. And I subbed on that show. I probably did maybe 6 performances before the lockdown. So I'm kind of on their roster. So I'm hoping they'll call me back to do things. But this is a press event. The regular bass player wasn't available, and they asked me to do it, and I was thrilled to do it. They just filmed us on stage back. That whole storyline was we're back at the theater for the first time in, a year and a half. And it was emotional, to walk back in that stage door again and stand up on that deck again. And I think they're just now starting rehearsals to they have to retech the show, basically. They almost have to start from scratch on it because a lot of the gear got loaded out. A lot of the sets, I think the sets are still there, but some of
they stored the sets.
The sets stayed in the theater, I believe.
Oh.
They were there, but I know some of the audio gear on one of the shows got loaded out and was going to have to be reloaded back in, and some of the projection gear on another show got loaded out. So it depends on the show, but I'd say a partial retech. It's probably going to cost each of these productions like $1 million to restart these shows,
Yeah, really. Oh, dear.
And the actors who haven't done these roles in a year and a half, they really have to get out the 3-in-1 oil can and shake off the rust, and the musicians, us too,
Yeah.
But we're all excited to do it. It's thrilling to sort of, be back in the mix.
Yeah, really. That's going to be fun. Although I probably won't fly to New York to see it.
Not yet. Maybe next year.
Arizona. I probably won't do that unless my husband retires and we get to retire. Then maybe I'll do it.
But I think there's a tour going out. So if that tour comes anywhere near you, I would strongly recommend that show. It's a tremendous show. Great story, great music, great book. And yeah, that's one of the ones was just starting to get involved in it before we shut down. But I was so proud to be associated with it. And that music, Motown music, has been some of the stuff that I've studied most closely over in my performing career. I was music director for a year on the road with Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. It was about about 15 years ago. So I mean, I really studied that the bass player on the Motown records was most of it's the same guy, a guy named James Jamerson, who's like the most well-recorded and famous bass player that nobody's ever heard of. You know, he's on all the Supremes records and all the Four Tops records and all the Temps records. It's all the same guy. Wow. And he's got a very specific style of playing that was revolutionary at the time. In fact, the Beatles were very heavily influenced by the Motown recordings they were listening to, and covered a bunch of Motown artists in their early recording days. So he's just this wildly influential musician, and to be able to sort of pay tribute to his work and recreate it and carry it forth live for a new generation of theater goers has been enormously satisfying to me personally, you know.
Wow. So I'll have to write that down because I'll have to look him up. I have, like you said, never heard of him. So I'll have to put him in the show notes, put something about him in the show notes.
Right. Yeah, he's one of those unsung heroes. They did a documentary about the musicians at Motown that came out, I want to say maybe 2003, called Standing in the Shadows of Motown. And the group of musicians was a group they called collectively the Funk Brothers, because it's the same pool of musicians who recorded on all of those stars. And in those days, they weren't getting any credit on the albums. There was no liner notes that, you know, and they didn't get credit on any records, I don't think, until Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, which was like 1971.
Oh, wow.
So they recorded all those hits starting in like, you know, The Best Things in Life Are Free, but you can give them to the birds and the bees. I Want Some Money, like in 1950, what was that, 59? So from 59 through 71, they recorded on all the Stevie Wonder, all the Four Tops, all the Temptations, all the Supremes in complete anonymity, complete obscurity. And this documentary about the Funk Brothers, you know, sort of like put their names up on a screen for the first time. And again, those of us sort of inside baseball, we knew who they were.
Right.
But it's been really great to sort of see them finally get some more public recognition.
Yeah, really. I'll have to look up that documentary because we really enjoyed the Genius documentary about Aretha Franklin.
Oh, yeah.
That was cool. And now they've got the other movie coming out about her with
Jennifer Hudson.
Yeah, Jennifer. I couldn't think of her first name. I was going to say Kate Hudson. No, that's not right. Jennifer Hudson, right? Yeah, because she was amazing.
Amazing.
And her life was amazing.
Yes, she has her own story is amazing, and Jennifer's story is amazing. And Aretha, before she passed, handpicked Jennifer. She said, "You're going to play me in the movie." My Jennifer Hudson story, I can tell you that we did the house band a couple of years in a row at the Kennedy Center for the Mark Twain Prize. We're sort of honoring. One year we were honoring Tina Fey, and Jennifer was one of the special musical guests, and she sang "Respect" by Aretha Franklin. So I have footage of me that's up on YouTube that can be found of me backing up Jennifer Hudson singing "Respect" like 13 years ago.
Wow.
Which I just reposted recently. Sort of like, the movie Respect puts me in mind of the time that we actually got to play that song with her at the Kennedy Center. And she was just lovely. I mean, she really sang her face off, and she's exactly the right person to do that part. And I'm so pleased to see that movie's finally coming out, and Aretha and Jennifer are both getting their just rewards as a result.
Yes, really, yeah. Well, I don't know. You may feel this way, but I kind of wouldn't mind being kind of in the background and meeting all these people, but not being the famous one. I think I would really enjoy that, getting to talk to them. And maybe that's why I started my podcast, because I would like to be the one that's sort of talking to them, but not be the famous one.
There's definitely a downside to it because, and as I've hung out with famous-y people, you can sort of see the way, and it depends where too, like the level of fame and where the venue. Sort of like, so I was talking about my friend Stanley Clark the other day, and if he and I are hanging out talking about, whatever, life, the universe, and everything, having lunch somewhere, it's fine. But when we get to the concert venue where he's performing, suddenly he becomes the star. And everybody, and I watched this because I've been sort of standing near him all these years. I watched the energy, the way that people come at him as he's being the famous guy. And it's an intense sort of thing. Like they want your time and they want your attention and they want, to tell them that the first time they heard your record was in 1974 and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, cool, great. And part of the job of the celebrity is to entertain that and contribute to that one-on-one experience. But it's a lot of work and it can be very exhausting, especially if you're worried about trying to now put together a concert of some very difficult music. Like you might need a minute to yourself to get your mental space together to be able to perform, and kind of need to be away from the fans for a time. But that's something you have to learn how to manage when you become quote unquote famous or famous-ish,
Right. Right.
But outside of the venue, like just in general population, very few people will come up to you, and they won't sort of bother you. So it sort of depends where you are as to how that fame manifests itself. And then there's a certain level of, movie star or whatever, like, you can't go anywhere because, you can't walk down the street without being, recognized and mobbed and autographs and pictures. Everybody wants a selfie now. That's the new thing everybody wants. And that can be exhausting, probably anywhere except New York. Like I've seen Paul McCartney on the street of New York, unmolested, because it's New York. People let him be. And I saw Harrison Ford walking down 7th Avenue once. I'm like, all right, people, they'll kind of let you be in New York a little bit, but maybe anywhere else, you're gonna have some problems. You have to deal with some fans.
Well, Harrison Ford was saying the reason he lived in Wyoming, I think it was Wyoming or Montana, was because they just go about their life and they don't really pay attention to me. And
That's right. Because he's that level of fame. Like he needs a place to go to sort of be able to get away from that. And I'm sure whoever his neighbors are, whoever the ranchers are that are his neighbors, they've all met him and like, okay, it's Harrison, whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah, really. Yeah. That's why I never wanted to be a famous person. Yeah.
Right. That's what I say too. Yeah, I never wanted that pesky fame to bother me, so I can have my privacy. But I'm not sure that I'm not. I might be lying a little bit to myself. I wouldn't mind it a little more of it.
Yeah, well, you are probably going to get more attention with your podcast and your book. And your YouTube channel. Maybe, do you have a lot of followers on your YouTube channel?
I get a lot of plays and a lot of spins, but I don't have a huge number of subscribers. So,
I see.
Who knows? Who
knows? Yeah.
It's hard to tell what's going to go where and what's going to be shared where, what's going to go viral or whatever. It's impossible to predict what's going to sort of resonate in the moment. So
with people,
I could get more famous. Who knows?
Yeah. Really?
It might have happened already, and I don't know about it. That's the other thing, too. Like, you don't find out about it till you wake up in the morning, and your Twitter feed blew up. You're like, well, what happened? What did I do?
But you don't have Twitter. I didn't see a Twitter account.
Oh, I got Twitter. Believe me, I got Twitter. I think I have everything but TikTok. That's the only one I don't think I have.
Yes. I'm so old. See, I graduated from high school in 1971, so I do not understand the TikTok thing. I have students who do it. I have acting students who do it, but I don't get it. So
well, this is our time to say, oh, these kids today with their rock and roll, this is our moment.
I kind of that's one thing I like about teaching, and I'm a little concerned about when I retire from teaching, is the students keep me young. They keep me up on what's actually going on. And, so I don't want to lose that necessarily. Of course, I have young nieces and nephews now. So maybe I'll continue to tune into what's actually,
Well, do you remember when Elvis was going to ruin the whole generation? You remember that?
Well, I was a kid.
Right.
Then. But yes, I remember. So
we survived Elvis. I think we'll survive TikTok.
We will. Oh, I'm not saying TikTok's bad. I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't connect with it for some reason. I don't want to do it. Right. I do have a YouTube channel, but it's mostly so I can take video of my acting students, and then only the people who have the link can go watch.
Sure.
They can go watch themselves.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about putting my podcast on YouTube.
Oh yeah, you should.
And it's changed. So when my husband's techie guy and an artist, and when he's retired, I think he's going to kind of take over all my social media stuff. So he and I will work out the YouTube thing, how to put it up on YouTube.
Then you'll expand your empire.
Yes. I don't have much of an empire, but I only have about 350 people following my blog, and I've been doing it since 2013. So,
right.
But that's okay. Yeah.
Well, I feel the same way you do. Like, what is 350 people, does that make a difference in the world? And in terms of sort of like Hollywood fame, no, it doesn't. But in terms of like having a community, absolutely it does. Like it's the same thing, sort of like having a coffee house meeting of 50 people or something. Like you're like-minded people talking about the same subject matter, and it absolutely does make a difference in the world, just on a micro kind of level. I remember there's a story I told in my book, kind of near the end of it. I was playing in a house band at a jam session. It was like 3 a.m. at a club. It would just do it every Monday night in Manhattan, like midnight to 3 kind of thing. So by 3 o'clock in the morning on a Monday night, Tuesday morning, there's not a lot of people around. A couple of drunks at the bar. Everybody's gotten up and they played their one blues lick or something. And I was just wondering out loud to a friend of mine. I was like, I'm not sure this is important work that we're doing here. At this time, at this hour. And she told me, it's like, no, it really is, because you're, even with this small group of people, you're building a community. You're having a communal experience of live music and interaction, and even though there's some peripheral drunks around or whatever, it's still, you're still having this valuable human experience, even on this small level. And it kind of something that resonated with me loudly, and I've sort of tried to keep that counsel sort of going forward, and to not discount things that may not seem like they're reaching a million people per exposure or whatever. Like, it's not always about that. And most of the time it's not about that,
Right. Well, and I guess that's why I enjoy the teaching still, but the teaching keeps me connected with people,
right.
And in a way that I probably wouldn't do otherwise, because I enjoy being home alone.
The podcast is just sort of you and I interacting one-on-one.
Right.
And then whoever's listening to it, they're interacting with us, but we're not necessarily interacting directly with them. I mean, we could in the comments or the tweets or whatever afterward the fact. But, as you say, in a classroom, you've got eyes looking at you and they're listening to what you have to say, and they're asking questions, and they're interacting, and it's a much more public, communal sort of experience, It's important. It's probably important to have both types,
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I've been involved with teaching in one way or another since I was 18. I was teacher's aide in a Montessori school and child development centers, and I taught through Parks and Rec and drama through Parks and Rec after I got my master's. And so I've done it for so many years, and in a way I want to quit doing it. And then I think, well, but maybe I could do it like, through the Center for Lifelong Learning or something like that. I might want to do it that way instead of through an accredited institution.
I think it's very similar for the music game too. Like, you probably got into teaching because there's some aspect of it that you dearly love, or else you wouldn't have pursued it all these years. And it's a similar thing with sort of music, like trying to learn how to play and become competent and do all these things. You have to love it to really want to stick with it. What you like is probably interacting with the students, and that kind of rewarding, and seeing the people's eyes light up when they first start to mend with things, So the same thing in music. Like you try to figure out what are the more fun aspects of the gig, and how can I do more of those and less of the administrative things.
Yeah, that's true. Well, do you have anything else you want to say?
Like, am I giving wisdom to the world? I don't know if I'm somebody who should be called giving advice to anybody. I don't think, I will say this though. I get asked a lot about people sort of coming up to me, and if they see that I've done X, Y, and Z gig, they say, how can I do that? How can I become a career musician, or how can I get into the business? And I always tell them pretty much the same thing. I said, if you can do anything else, do that, because this is going to be a long, long road of heartache in addition to any of the rewards that you might enjoy. Like, you really have to be able to eat an enormous amount of crap to ultimately sort of become successful. And success could be measured by, fame and fortune, or just successful at paying your rent, playing music. That's a level of success that a lot of people find hard to get to. So, I only embarked on this journey as a professional musician when I felt that I had absolutely run out of any option to do anything else. And it was kind of a dismaying realization to come to. It's like, oh no, because the odds are long, and I knew that. So that's when I decided, okay, now I've decided that I'm going to do this. I went back to school. I went back to music school, got my degree in music, so because I knew I had to have my skill sets together in addition to every level on top of that.
Yes.
Because you can only go through doors that open. But the trick is, once you've gotten into a door that's opened, but if once you get there, you can't then produce the results that they're looking for, it's going to be one and done. That's been the sort of the longevity secret. But I try to dissuade everybody from going into the performing arts unless you're absolutely, faced with nothing else that you can conceivably want to do.
Yeah, you have to do what you love, but you also have to take into account the hardships and the hard road, and it's not going to be easy. And I agree with you.
I think that's right. You have to be able to face rejection, because you're a performer, you're going to do auditions, you're going to get rejected over and over and over again. It's sort of like they look, if somebody's auditioning for a band or for a play or for a musical, they have something that they need. They need somebody who sounds like this, or who looks like that, or who can play like this, and if you play what they're looking for, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're incompetent. It just means that they're looking for something a little different. That's very hard to internalize, and not sort of take that rejection personally.
Right. Yeah. Well, I am so happy that we got hooked up on Podmatch and that I got to talk to you, because I don't really know very much about the music business. And so I'm excited to finish reading your book, and I'm hoping that people listen to this and go buy it and check out your YouTube channel and all your social media.
All that, yeah. Everything's at my website, funkboy.net. Links to all the socials, all the YouTubes, all the Amazon links for the book. Everything's all there in one-stop shopping.
Yes, good. Ivan, thank you so much for being my guest, and good luck on all your endeavors.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed the show. If you like what you heard, please share it with a friend and give us a review on your favorite podcast app. It will help people find us. You'll find the show notes for this episode at my website, Sage Woman Chronicles, at sagewoman.life. You can leave a comment there. And remember, as Philip Pullman said, after nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the thing we need most in the world. Until next time, this is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden. Thanks for listening.